In His grace, God gave us a sequential end-time timeline that was hidden in the Psalms for thousands of years, waiting to be discovered. It has now been revealed here at the last minutes of the church age. This channel discusses end-time prophecy from the unique perspective of the encrypted timeline in the Psalms. If you want to know where we are on the timeline, please subscribe and take some time to watch the other videos on this channel. Also, please consider purchasing a copy of Encrypted, Unlocking the Timeline Revelation in the Psalms. Not only will it help you to better understand the time we're living in, but it will also be a very important book to leave behind. God bless you.
Okay, well, how to start. So we missed last week. I don't know if anybody realized that there wasn't a video, but there wasn't a video because we skipped last week completely, and which was both good and bad because I definitely needed a break, and I was feeling pretty burnt out, and also kind of, I know I explained this a little while ago. Let me try to articulate this without spending a lot of time on it. But kind of sensing that maybe I was walking and the Lord wasn't walking next to me any longer. He was testing me to see if I would just keep going without Him. I think a friend of mine and I were talking about it, and that seemed like a decent analogy anyway. I just felt like I was alone all of a sudden, and I started wondering if I needed to continue doing this, because I spend an insane amount of time studying, reading, writing. When the Lord shows me a little something and I see a timeline in there, I just have to keep digging and digging. And so it does take me away from work, which means, you know, that's trouble. And also away from family, and that's trouble. And so I do spend way too many hours doing all of this. And so towards the middle of the week last week, I was basically at a point where I was like, you know what, I think we've done so many timelines, and there's such a huge mountain of evidence now that we are in the season. This isn't about the rapture. This is just about the season of the tribulation period coming. That we are definitely there. All signs point to it, and all of these timelines point to it. So last time I counted them, there were, 22, and that's been a month or so ago, and we probably added 4 or 5 since then, so I haven't gone back to look at it. But you know, the reality is that at some point, either there aren't any more, or we've uncovered enough that if the point of this is just to show people that where we're at, and it's time to take it seriously and realize that time is short. The what am I trying to say? The harvest is about to happen. I mean, it happens every day. You know, people pass away every day. That's kind of a little bit of a harvest, but for the Lord. But the big one's coming, and you know, using that as an analogy. But you know, the Lord is going to be coming back, and we are the workers in the field, and we aren't really, I don't know, I kind of still get this impression that most of the church is asleep. And so, you know, to me, it's like we need to take the church outside of the church walls and get it more outside into the world that we've been placed in, and help to prepare people, bring them to the Lord. That's the whole point of this meeting every week, is really just to say, look at all this evidence. It's sort of overwhelming at this point, and you know, we just have to get serious about it, because when Jesus left His church here, and He left, He gave us the Great Commission, so we became His ambassadors here while He went to build our home with the Father. So what He was hoping that we would be doing would be carrying on the work that He did. Well, if you read, you know, His ministry, how much of that are we doing? Are we making any efforts at that at all? And I think, and I'll just speak for myself, for most of my life I wasn't. I was living for Carl and not for God's interest, the kingdom, his glory, or anything. And so that's not a salvation issue. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is actually fulfilling. God's word tells us that, we need to fulfill the Great Commission. That's why he gave it. It wasn't like, if you have time, then think about it. But also we were saved by grace through faith, and then people don't want to read the rest of that, which says, to do the good works that he prepared beforehand for you to accomplish. And I'm paraphrasing, but so, we're saved, but he expects us to. So think about it. He wrote a book. There's a book of Carl maybe somewhere, or maybe I just have a little chapter somewhere in a bigger book. But he wrote the things that he wanted me to accomplish. I am at a point in my life, in my walk with the Lord, that I want to accomplish those things, and I want to do it to the best of my ability. And so I pray about that all the time. And I have sorrow that I lived so many years not caring about that, just living for my own self and what I wanted, Anyway. That's not even what I'm supposed to be talking about, but that's. I think maybe it's important. So, but with last week, I was kind of at a point where I was sensing that the Lord had stopped, even though I'm asking for Him to continue to show me, guide my path. If you want me to keep learning and digging and studying and decrypting a lot of these things in your word, please light my path. I mean, that's pretty much a simple prayer, but that's what it is. And then all of a sudden it just seemed like it wasn't there anymore. It's like I'm kind of still walking and looking around, looking pretty lost and lonely, and it's like he stopped. And then I realized it because I just had this strange sense that it's just like but it was a sense that I'm finished, because I didn't know how else to really term it. So I was on my knee. The night that we skipped last Friday, I was pretty happy about skipping. I'll be honest with you. I needed a night off. I think my family needed me home. We needed to just spend some time together, just hanging out and stuff, and not being stressed about how to get all this together, how to get work done at work, and because the two don't coexist very well. And so it was good. And I went to bed that night, but before I went to bed, I always pray by my bedside, Lord, I'm pretty sure you want me to not do this anymore. Well, that was Carl speaking, because I really didn't want to do this anymore. I'm kind of burnt out, I think, is part of it too, because of all the time that it takes. So I was praying, Lord, I'm sensing here that you are done and I don't really have to do this anymore. But I said, Lord, but I'm going to continue to be obedient. So I'm not going to keep going forward unless you literally point something out to me and on your own. Like, you point it out and I'll dig it out. Kind of like, this is a horrible analogy, but like a hound dog or something, right? Like, there's a truffle out there in the woods that he put, and now I'm the hound dog that's got to go find it and dig it up. Sorry, terrible analogy. But I've never even tasted a truffle. I think it's really expensive, though. Probably more than the dog. Anyway, so I said that prayer Friday evening, and I went to bed pretty happy, because I was thinking, okay, I do believe this is it. We've got enough evidence. I don't think there's really a need for any more of this. And so we're done here. I can go back to work, and I can make a living until the Lord comes, and I'll just keep, occupying, which means bearing fruit for Him, but also for my family, until He comes back. And so went to bed, woke up the next morning, came into work to try to catch up on Saturday on things that I didn't get done throughout the week. And there was a comment from someone. If I were better, I would have their handle or name written down and I'd give them a plug, but I'm not that good at this. So I didn't do that. But he sent me a comment. It was just a simple question. How old was Rachel when she was married to Jacob? And so I thought, well, I'm pretty sure that's not found in the Bible. And if it was, then he wouldn't have asked the question. He would have looked it up. So I was pretty certain it's not in the Bible. I didn't recall ever seeing that. And I was also pretty sure that the rabbis would have an opinion on it, but that doesn't really mean anything. And they do. They do have an opinion on it, and they think that she was probably 14 when they met, 21 or 22 when they got married. But again, that doesn't actually mean anything or come from anywhere. It's just tradition. So we had been talking about the book of Jasher, and I still had that sort of open on my desktop. And so I thought, well, you know, if any book's going to have that, it'll probably be the book of Jasher. So I started digging around in there, and I realized, oh, wow. Like, I mean, here it is Saturday morning. I prayed that prayer 8 hours ago, and I see another timeline right there in the book of Jasher, like staring at me in the face. And I just said, oh, Lord, you did it again. But in the past, when I said, oh, Lord, you did it again, it was like joyful. It was like, wow, Lord, you did it again. I prayed for you to open this up to me, and so that I could, you know, understand this hidden message in here or whatever. And I was all excited, but this time it was like, oh, Lord, you did it again. No. So anyway, but I did promise him that I would be obedient, and if he did this, that I would keep following through, which is what I did. So this week I put a lesson together based on this, but I want to say right now that I fully believe that this timeline, this message that was hidden in there for all these years to be discovered, it isn't fully known yet, and I don't believe that I will be able to finish this. I think that some of this, just like with Daniel, you know, seal up this until the time of the end, I think some of this, like the scroll that they had to eat, you know, what was that? Not only Daniel, but Ezekiel and John, they all had a similar thing. But anyway, I haven't had to eat a scroll yet. I'm just kidding. But the point is that I believe that some of this information in here, although I can see some crazy things in here, you know, I'm looking at stuff and I'm like, Lord, I know there's more in there, but I don't know what it is yet, because I think things have to continue and they have to happen so that people will be able to look at it and say, oh, now I know what that means, because it just hasn't been revealed yet, because we're not that close in the tribulation. This is about the tribulation period. So long story short is, I do believe that this is a timeline. I believe that God wanted it to be revealed in, at least in part, today, so that it is in the bin, so that it's left when we're no longer here. And you know, oh, so it's a good time to say also, there's a website. Yeah, there's a website. It's up. I failed miserably this week at updating it, and but yeah, so I will. So I will put the information like here, I guess, when I edit this, but you can get to the website through Carl with a K, Lawley, LAWLEY.com, or portiasandprophecy.com. They both go, so if you forget one, remember the other. They both go to the same place, and that's where all of the documents are going to be. And eventually all of the videos are going to be there, and as much information as I can put there. I've even started trying to compile a lot of my old messages from church, back when, you remember, and I've been searching around my computer. I've had all kinds of computer problems since then, but I found quite a few of them, and I want to put those on there as well. because I think they'll be important during the tribulation period. So, and then there's also the Google Docs location that has a lot of that as well. So it'll be a little bit redundant. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped to put that together, and I will do a little shout out or a little written something at the end of the video. So anyway, let me figure out where I'm at now. I got all sidetracked. Oh yeah, so this timeline, obviously it's not straight out of the Bible, although there's an awful lot of Bible in my lesson here. It is from the book of Jasher, which is where this sort of timeline was. I mean, if I don't even want to call it hidden, because it was right out in the open. You know, when you read it, it's like, oh my goodness, it's just right there. But no one knew to see it. And I've had people ask, you know, well, how come you don't teach more on the Psalms of Asaph and the Psalms of Ascent as the timeline in your book? And that's because that's sort of the base, that's the backbone of everything, okay? So that's the timeline that how allows us to put it on a calendar. All of these other timelines interconnect onto that so that then you can also put it on a calendar. But see, without that, I would have never known to look for Jacob being 77 years old and then marrying Rachel and Leah when he was 84 years old. That wouldn't have meant anything. But now, because of the timeline in the Psalms, how you can plot that on a calendar by years, now it all means something. So last Saturday morning, when I came in and I started looking at this, and I'm seeing, okay, straight out of Jasher, there's all these extra details that aren't in Genesis. And Jacob's 77 years old, and then all these things happen, and then he goes to Laban, and he's still 77 years old, and then he makes a deal with him, and I'll get to all this in detail, but this is just really quick. And then all of a sudden it says, and then 2 years after he arrived, so now I can plot that on a timeline, and then 3 years after he arrived, this happened, and then 4 years, it goes all the way to 7 years. All these events happened. And then when I started looking at it, like, all of that has meaning. All of that is telling a different story within the tribulation period. Does that make sense? So you take his 7 years, and now you know all these events happened during the 7 years while he was working for Rachel, but he ended up getting Leah instead, right? But he actually married both of them at 84 years old. But he then had to work another 7 to pay for Rachel, but he married her at 84. 1 week, 1/7 after he married Leah, was tricked. But anyway, the point is that now within that 7 years, back then, these certain events happen and certain names are plugged in there and numbers are plugged in that you can figure out that they have a separate meaning. So there's a story within the story. So that's where we're at. So if that makes sense, I'm going to, at this point, stop rambling, and I'm going to read what I wrote, and then we'll get out of here before it starts getting too hot. Okay, so Rachel's story begins in chapter 30 of the book of Jasher. Chapter 29 reveals that Jacob was 77 years old when he left home, and according to chapter 30, he was still 77 when he met Rachel. Remember, Israel is Jacob and Jacob is Israel, right? And also remember that this spring Israel will be 77 years old. Since 1948 they will be 77 years old, May 14th of next year. Yeah. So as I was looking for an answer to the question of how old Rachel was, I noticed that specifics were given about people and events that took place before and after Jacob arrived at Haran, between the time he was 77 and 84. I thought, this is kind of going back to what I was talking about, like, Lord, that is way too easy, and you did it again, but, please, can you pick on somebody else? Anyway, no, actually, I love doing this, and if I could do this every day, I would. But I mean, it's a struggle. I'm not going to say this. It's a sacrifice. We'll just put it that way. It's definitely a sacrifice. But so anyway, the text gives me a lot to work with, as you will see. But I don't believe that we can decipher all of it from our point in time. Some of it will be revealed during the tribulation for others to figure out. That's why I believe it's important today for this timeline to be revealed, not for us, but for others in the future. It will go instantly to the uploads on the website. I'll try to get that done this weekend and on the Google Docs page. So, if anyone's interested in having it for their little left behind or leave behind box, that would be great. It'll be there for free. The timeline itself and the document. All right, so here's the account of Jacob leaving his father's house in Beersheba when he was 77 years old. Again, Israel, I'm going to say this a bunch of times, but Israel will be 77 in the spring. That's pretty crazy. Okay, there's a pattern there. He left Beersheba at the request of his parents, Isaac and Rebekah. And that was to escape Esau, if you will recall in the Bible. Esau wanted to kill him, and so the other thing, there were two things there. Esau wanted to kill him, and Isaac and Rebekah wanted him to go and find a bride back in Abraham's homeland and not from the Canaanites. So, yeah, and basically because Esau had taken, I think at that point, 2 brides from the Canaanites, and they were wicked, and they were worshiping other gods. And so they looked they frowned upon that big time, and they did not want Jacob to do the same thing, to have to take a bride from the local population. So, what does Beersheba mean? See, what we're going to do is we're going through this. There are specific names mentioned and numbers and events. And if you go back and you look up let me just say it this way. God put these special names in here, like people were named a certain thing or a place was given a certain name for this purpose. It never made sense before. It just, oh, well, it's a name, right? But now all of a sudden it makes sense because all this tells another story. Beersheba. So remember, at 77, this would be the start of the 7-year tribulation period. He starts his journey at a place called Beersheba, which is translated the well of 7 or the well of a covenant. And that goes back to Abraham's time. And there's a whole backstory to that too. But the same location has this other backstory that I'll talk about a little bit in a little while. So anyway, so think about that. On a timeline at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, where we would plot this because of the number 77, his starting point is a place called the Well of 7, and it's related to a covenant. What starts the tribulation period? It's literally the signing of a covenant, a 7-year covenant. Yeah, you can't make that up. It just, wow, but we've never seen this before. None of this ever, made any sense. Okay, so what I did in this is I was writing, because I don't have all the answers. I'm asking some questions, so bear with me as I go through it. So is the name Beersheba foreshadowing a coming 7-year covenant in the 77th year of Jacob/Israel's life? Because remember, Jacob is Israel. I've inserted the story of Abraham and Abimelech because I believe it will be important in the future. Abimelech in Hebrew means father king, or my father is king. There are several Abimelechs in the Bible, by the way. This is another one. This isn't the one that we heard about who was one of Gideon's sons. This is a different Abimelech. Now, Phicol, who I haven't really introduced you to yet, but that's another name inserted right here. Phicol means mouth of all, and he was the Sar, S-A-R, in Hebrew, which is translated as commander. In English, we call it commander. In most translations, that's what you see. However, in Hebrew, it also means great, prince, leader, ruler, and chief. Now, this is important because Michael, the archangel, was also called a Sar. He was literally called, in Daniel 12, he was called Hasar Hagadol, meaning the great prince. So, I jumped ahead a little bit. Let me read this, and then this will start to make sense. Okay? This is Genesis 21, 22 through 34. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, spoke to Abraham, saying, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me by God that you will not deal falsely with me, with my offspring, or with my posterity, but that according to the kindness that I have done to you, you will do to me and to the land in which you have dwelt. And Abraham said, I will swear. I wasn't actually going to read this, but I realized that talking about Phicol and Abimelech doesn't make any sense without the story, so I'm sorry. I put it in here, but I wasn't really planning on reading it. So then Abraham rebuked Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had seized. And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, nor had I heard it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs, and I guess that's not icky lambs, that's baby lambs, of the flock by themselves. So he separated 7 small lambs at the well of the covenant. Then Abimelech asked Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs which you have set by themselves? And he said, you will take these 7 ewe lambs from my hand, that they may be my witness that I have dug this well. Therefore he called that place Beersheba. Okay? Because the two of them swore an oath or a covenant at that place. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Now do you see the inside story? Like how what happened that day to Abraham actually has future reference, and how God snuck that in there later in the story when Jacob is 77 years old, and now you've got this repeated story of 7 and a covenant in a 77 years. It's just like, wow. So it gets even better. But this is a rabbit hole that I didn't really go down too far. So thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. So Abimelech rose with Phicol, and we'll talk about him again, the commander of his army, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. So this was the Philistine king. Okay. Then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and they called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God, and Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines many days. Okay. So let's go back to what I wrote about Phicol and Abimelech. So, Phicol means mouth of all, and Phicol was a Sar, S-A-R in Hebrew, which is translated commander, but as I said before, Michael the archangel was also called a Sar, so which means that fallen angels with this kind of power, the prince of the power of the air, you know, like Ephesians 6:12 talks about the principalities, you could say. Now that was written in Greek, not in Hebrew, but I'm pretty sure we're talking about the same SARs, but we're talking about the fallen ones or the evil ones. So my hunch here is that Abimelech, as the king at this point in 77, has this sidekick who's a Sar, a prince. And think about it, his name also means mouth of all. Think about all the prophecies of the Antichrist and about his mouth, what comes out of his mouth. You know, in blasphemies of God, all sorts of things throughout Bible prophecy are about his mouth, speaking evil things and so forth. So I have a feeling that's a foreshadowing of the Antichrist, because at this point he's not the head guy, he's like secondary. Remember, he's the little horn rising. Can I prove any of that? No. Is it my hunch? Yes, it's my hunch. And I think it's there's an interconnection there, especially within the Hebrew. So anyway, I will leave that there. Okay, let's get back to Jacob's story now. So Jacob departed from his father's house. Something important happened to Jacob on his journey that wasn't detailed in the Bible, but is detailed in the book of Jasher. So here's Jasher 29:31. And when Jacob went away to go to Haran, Esau called unto his son Eliphaz. Okay. And secretly spoke unto him, saying, Now hasten, take thy sword in thy hand, and pursue Jacob, and pass before him in the road, and lurk for him, and slay him with the sword in one of the mountains, and take all belonging to him, and come back. So this is Jacob's brother Esau commanding his son Eliphaz to go and kill and plunder Jacob. So this happened when Jacob and Esau again were 77 years old. Eliphaz was 13 years old and was already an expert archer. He took 10 men, making him the 11th. Do you guys remember the 10 and the one extra, the 11th? Okay. That's not coincidence. So he took 10 men with him to carry out his father's orders. However, he did not slay Jacob, but only plundered him of his wealth, which then Eliphaz brought back to his father Esau. Esau was not happy about that, by the way. He wanted him dead. But it didn't happen. So, Jasher 29:37 through 38. Behold, that I have... Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Behold, all that I have, and which my father and mother gave unto me, that take unto thee, and go from me, and do not slay me, and may this thing be accounted unto thee as righteousness. That's Jacob pleading for his life to this 13-year-old Eliphaz and his 10 soldiers, basically, that's with him. And the Lord caused Jacob to find favor in the sight of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, and his men, and they hearkened to the voice of Jacob, and they did not put him to death. And Eliphaz and his men took all belonging to Jacob, together with the silver and the gold that he had brought with him from Beersheba. They left him with nothing. Okay? Notice that Esau, now we're going to put this together. Notice that Esau sent his son to kill and plunder Jacob. Isn't that what Ezekiel 38 is all about? Killing and plundering Israel. Notice also that Jacob survived because of the Lord who intervened on his behalf, okay? Just as Israel will survive because of the Lord at the climax of the Gog-Magog war. Now it's different, but the same. Does that make sense? Here, he didn't intend, like God didn't intend to kill Eliphaz. So he basically made him, in his mind, obedient. Okay? But with the Gog-Magog, Ezekiel 38, it's a different story. So the outcome is sort of the same. It's the same story, but it's different. And that's how God encrypts this. If he did it one-to-one, then it would be really easy. Like everybody would see it and it wouldn't be anything to search for. It wouldn't be anything to meditate on. But once you start looking at this is why it takes so much time. You have to meditate on it. And you have to pray about it. Lord, I see it, but I can't see it. I know it's there, but it's so many layers deep, I can't really dig it out, and I need your help. Light this path. I really want to see it. And then meditate on it. Read it. Go back. Search other scriptures that have to deal with some of the same accounts. And then it starts to slowly become more apparent. And a lot of times I sense that I'm seeing this. I know it's there, but I'm seeing it so dimly I can't really make it out. But anyway, long story short, again, I think the best way to put it is it's the same story, just different. Okay. So, this text in Jasher also answers the question of why. You ever thought about this? Okay. I'm going to start that over. But I get all kind of giggly about this because I never thought of this before until now. You remember in the Bible, Isaac and Rebekah were really wealthy. Abraham was insanely wealthy. Okay? Isaac and Rebekah were blessed beyond all measure. Why would their son be so broke that he couldn't even pay the bride price when he made it to Laban's house? He had to work. It's like going to a restaurant, like buying your food, and they're like, uh-oh, I don't have any money, so you got to go wash the dishes, for them to pay off your meal. He shows up broke. I never thought of that before. The answer's in the book of Jasher. Because Eliphaz came and didn't kill him, but he plundered him. It literally says he left him with nothing. So now Jacob arrives at Laban's, and he's dirt poor. He has nothing. And that's why he has to work. Otherwise, in that custom, you just pay the bride price. How much do you want for her? 50 shekels of silver or whatever, 10 goats and 5 camels or whatever, but he was broke. So you tell me that doesn't make sense now. Whereas it never really crossed my mind, but once I saw this, it's like, how come I never even thought of that? It doesn't really make sense. But anyway, so I'll probably have to edit that out because that's kind of a mind-blown kind of thing, right? Okay, so I get excited about stuff like that, and I feel like that old commercial, like, I should have had a V8. It's like the light bulb comes on, and it's like, wow, Lord, I just never saw it, and I never even knew to look for it. But there should have been there should have been a question. As we all read that story, we should have put a question mark, like, why was he so broke? In that custom, you paid the bride price. He couldn't because he didn't have any money. He didn't have anything. Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know where I was. I always do that. So, this text in Jasher also answers the question of why Jacob couldn't afford the bride price for Rachel and had to work for her for 7 years instead. He was flat broke because Esau's son took everything from him. Remember, Jacob was sent on his way by his parents, Isaac and Rebekah, with great riches. Now, it doesn't say that in the Bible, I'm pretty sure, but it does say that in the book of Jasher. But it stands to reason. They were wealthy. Why would they send their son penniless to go find a bride? That makes no sense at all. Okay. But he arrived in Haran with nothing, causing him to have to work for 7 years to pay her father's bride price. Ultimately, Jacob paid the same price for each of his brides, which was 7 years of work each. Okay, here's where it gets really good. Jesus also came with nothing and had to pay the bride price in his own blood. You see, it's the same, but it's different. Philippians 2:6-8. Who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being... Jacob had to serve for 7 years. So Jesus then makes himself a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. So backing up there in verse 7, rather he made himself nothing. If those two things aren't connected, I don't know what is. All right. So let's back up again. Before Jacob, who was 77, met Rachel, he first had to travel from Beersheba to Padan Aram. And this is in Genesis 28, known as Haran in Jasher 29. I do believe they were two different places, but they were located next to each other. Probably like we think of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They're kind of right there. Seems like maybe this well that they come to was maybe in between the two. So the names are kind of used interchangeably. Okay, so... okay, where was I? Blah, 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 blah. I'm backing up for a moment. Before Jacob, who was 77, met Rachel, he first had to travel from Beersheba to Padan Aram, known as Haran in Jasher. Remember that he was to go to the house of Bethuel to find a bride. There's another name. You can just go through these verses, and every time you see a name or a number or like a name of a place or something like that, write it down and then go and look up in Hebrew what that means, and a whole nother story comes to life. All right. So we already know that Beersheba has to do with a covenant of 7. Okay, specifically it was 7 lambs. Padan Aram means it's a field of Aram in Syria. But now here's where it gets better. Abraham, okay, back in Genesis 24. Hold on. I'm getting sweaty, unfortunately. So Abraham called it my land in Genesis 24. When he sent his servant to that land to retrieve a virgin bride for his son Isaac. Do you remember the whole story of Isaac and Rebekah relates to the rapture of the church and the tribulation period as well. So the point here is that Padan Aram was known in the Bible as Abraham's land in Genesis 24. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Bethuel, oddly enough, means virgin of God. So I've already discussed and wrote about the symbolic connections between the story of how Isaac met Rebekah and the rapture. It seems that God is connecting both stories here through the use of names, their meanings, and some common images like wells, as you will see. The wells are very important. During the same time, Esau saw that his parents were displeased with his wives from Canaan. So he took a wife who was the daughter of his uncle Ishmael. That's a really bad idea. Okay. Her name was Mahalath. This is when the line of Esau and Ishmael intermixed. This is the first time it intermixed. And what does that mean for 2025? I just keep having to ask these questions, because if this happened when both Jacob and Esau was 77, this relates to the year 2025, and there is this marrying of Esau and Ishmael, and we can recognize, I think, pretty well that the Edomites, which are the descendants of Esau, would be probably the Palestinians today. I think that's the best fit. And the Ishmaelites are the Arabs. And so, who is at war with Israel today? Right? Okay, so now this is really cool. Mahalath, that's the woman that Esau married, who was a daughter of Ishmael. Mahalath means sad song, weak, weary, humble, afflicted. But here's where it gets even better. This is so amazing. God interconnected 2 more psalms through her name. There are 2 psalms in the Bible that have her name in the heading. And they're all tribulation related, both of them. Okay, so, yeah. Mahalath. Mahalath. So, Psalm 53 and Psalm 88 both have her name in the heading, because remember, her name also means a sad song. So these 2 psalms were sort of like, well, you know what? If it's okay, I'm just going to read the 2 psalms. I may cut this out because it might make this too long, but I'm just going to read them. I'm going to try my best not to comment on them, but there's some things in here that just, it's just crazy. All right, so Psalm 53, it says, to the chief musician, set to Hamaleth. Sometimes I get so tongue-tied. So to the chief musician, set to Mahalath. Why is her name in there? Okay. Come on. And it's a psalm. Okay, so the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Now, before I continue, put yourself in the tribulation period post Gog-Magog war, when you literally saw God supernaturally protect Israel and decimate their enemies. Okay, that's the time that this, I believe, this pertains to. So if you can kind of take your mind into that time, and you're left here, you didn't get raptured, you're left here on earth, and you're looking at this. So the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt and have done abominable iniquity. There is none who does good. God looks down from heaven upon the children of men, so not just Israel, we're talking men, to see if there are any who understand, who seek God. Every one of them has turned aside. They have together become corrupt. There is no one who does good, no, not one. Have the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people, now we're talking mostly about Israel, I would believe, as they eat bread, and do not call upon God. There they are in great fear, where no fear was. For God has scattered the bones of him who encamps against you, Israel. You scattered the bones. Okay, so the vultures, the dead bodies, what's left? Bones, okay? You have put them to shame because God has despised them. Oh, that the salvation of Israel would come out of Zion, when God brings back the captivity of his people, the remnant. Let Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad. So that was Psalm 53. Stay in that same frame of mind. I'm going to read Psalm 88, also set to Mahalath, a sad song musically. O Lord, God of my salvation, I have cried out day and night before you. So you're in the tribulation period. Okay, this makes sense. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. For my soul is full of troubles, time of Jacob's trouble. And my life draws near to the grave. I am counted with those who go down to the pit. I am like a man who has no strength, adrift among the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, and who are cut off from your land. Cut off usually means dead. You have laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness, in the depths. Your wrath, okay, there's a good word, lies heavy upon me, and you have afflicted me with all your waves. Remember, men's hearts will be failing for the things that, like the ocean and the waves and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know, I'm just saying. You have put away my acquaintances far from me. You have made me an abomination to them. I am shut up and I cannot get out. Kind of like the trap. Remember the fowler's snare? It's a trap for the world. My eye wastes away because of affliction. Lord, I have called daily upon you. I have stretched out my hands to you. Will you work wonders for the dead? Shall the dead arise, resurrection, and praise you? Selah. Shall your loving kindness be declared in the grave, or your faithfulness in the place of destruction? Shall your wonders be known in the dark, and your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness? But to you I have cried out, O Lord, and in the morning my prayer comes before you. Lord, why do you cast off my soul? Why do you hide your face from me? I have been afflicted and ready to die from my youth. That is straight out of one of our other psalms right there. Afflicted and from my youth. I suffer your terrors. I am distraught. If this isn't a picture of the tribulation period that Jesus said will be worse than any other time in history, I don't know what is. Your fierce wrath has gone over me. Your terrors have cut me off. This is God pouring out his wrath on earth, right? They came around me all day long like water. They engulfed me altogether. There's that flood scene again. Loved one and friend you have put far from me, and my acquaintances into darkness. Again, if that's not a picture of the tribulation period, I don't know what is. So that's Psalm 53 and Psalm 88 connecting into this through the use of God placed. This woman was named Mahalath specifically for this purpose, for this time. I absolutely believe every name, every jot and tittle in the Bible is specifically there for a purpose, and we never understood that before. We read it like it was just cheap literature, and it's not at all. Now, let me say something else. Psalm 88, the last one, because 53 and then 88. 88 happens to be a psalm, not only a song sung to the tune or the kind of the somberness of Mahalath, a sad song. It's also a song of the sons of Korah, which relates to the year, the 84th year of Israel, because Psalm 84 is also a song of the sons of Korah, which is all about redemption. Okay. Anyway, okay. Is that enough on that? Mind's blown at all? Is that pretty amazing? Because mine was. All right. So around the same time, Jacob traveled to Luz and dreamed of a ladder between heaven and earth. So you all know the story, right? He was 77 years old. All this happened when he left. He got robbed. He didn't get killed. All this stuff is happening that year that he meets Rachel and the tribulation period starts. So now he's at this place that he calls Bethel, house of God, the gateway of God. Okay. I keep getting ahead of myself. So let me just read this again. Around the same time, Jacob traveled to Luz and dreamed of a ladder between heaven and earth. He was promised the land for his descendants by the Lord at that place. He called that place Bethel, house of God, gate of heaven. Jacob left Bethel and came to a place with a well near Haran and Padan Aram. That's assuming that they're two separate places. Again, the whole concept, though, of this Jacob going to Bethel, or this place where he sees the gateway and that he meets God in this place, Jesus, and is promised, this land for his descendants, and he calls it Bethel, which, of course, as we know, means house of God or the gateway to heaven. Now, knowing that that's in his 77th year, all of this starts to make more sense. My deep down desire, though, is that whole gateway to heaven, that isn't symbolic of the rapture in the year 70. There's actually a lot of stuff. I'm not really going to talk about it tonight, but I see a lot of stuff in here that could be interrelated with the rapture, a rapture resurrection event in his 77th year. Lord, please. We've passed the Feast of Trumpets. I wasn't, for years I thought that sounded logical, that the rapture would be at the Feast of Trumpets, for many reasons, and I detail a lot of them in my book. But I never thought that it absolutely has to be this way, because God is God. He'll do whatever he wants to do. And I also realized that just as at his first coming, he fulfilled all of the first 4 feast days in 1 week's time. And so, starting with Passover and all that. So he did all that in 1 week. It didn't, the fulfillment of that didn't start years before or at his birth, and then he fulfilled this and this. He boom, 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 boom. He did all of it right there. And then, of course, the Feast of Weeks, Pentecost. Wow. I couldn't think of Pentecost to save my life. I have Sukkot stuck in my head. But anyway, he fulfilled that, 50 days, later. So, but anyway, there weren't years in between. It wasn't like when he started his ministry was on Passover, and then, when he finished it, it was over here. So then I start thinking, well, what's the likelihood that when he returns, it's going to be the same way? Boom, 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 he's going to fulfill it, instead of it being one thing here, and then 7 years later, another thing, and then another thing. So I don't know. We don't know. That's the mystery of it. We don't know. But yeah, since the Feast of Trumpets now has passed, I have really, I'll be honest with you, I'm terrible because I'm busy writing this and I'm busy trying to get some work done. And I've kind of lost complete track of time as far as the calendar, the Hebrew, I don't really want to call it the Hebrew calendar, but the Jewish calendar, yeah, of where we're at. And I really don't even care anymore. So I'm not one, it's like, oh, is it the Day of Atonement? Maybe this is going to happen on the Day of Atonement or on Tabernacles or on the last day of Tabernacles or whatever. You know what? Jesus said to watch. We're watching. The only thing that I can really stand on now is that I can only see that he really gave us one big clue, and that's Luke 17 matching Ezekiel 39. You know, we know that he's talking about the paralambano, you know, taking the bride to his side. You know, where, Lord? Well, okay, when you see the vultures circling the dead bodies, well, that's where? Well, that's over Israel after, you know, as far as Ezekiel 39, verse 4, that's going to be in Israel. So that not only gives us the where, but by default it gives us the when. So when we see the dead bodies and the vultures, buddy, I'm going to be looking up. And that seems like it's got to be soon because the war continues. Even like mainstream preacher people online, when I look at some of their little thumbnails and listen to a little bit of their, I don't want to listen to a lot of it. I don't want to get off track. I want to be, you've always got the right word. I don't want to be influenced. Thank you. Ruth, you failed me completely tonight. I don't want to be influenced, so I just want to listen. I know this sounds stupid, maybe, but it kind of sounds stupid coming out of my mouth, but I just want to hear from the Lord and what the Bible tells me. I don't want to, no, but it sounds like I think I'm somebody, and, you know, like, well, the Lord's got, you know, I got the red phone, you know, direct connection to, no, not at all. It's not like that at all, but yeah. Yeah, I just I don't want anybody to think that I believe I've got like the hotline to God here, because I don't. You know, it's he makes me work for it. For anything that I can put on paper, I had to, every sentence I probably got, you know, a lot of time invested in trying to figure it out, but through a lot of prayer and meditation. But anyway, what was I talking about? I totally lost my train of thought. No, but before that, like, what was the point? Yeah, thank you. Man, you get a gold star tonight. Ruth, sorry, you're out. No, so when you boil it all down, and we've had a lot of theories over the years, and my theory was, you know, that when Jesus was saying, you know, you won't know the day or the hour, there was kind of a little wink wink, because that relates to the Feast of Trumpets. And there was kind of a lot of stuff built in. There's a lot of Jewishness built into all of that kind of wraps itself around the rapture, you know. And I wrote a lot about that again in the book. And but I was never like, it has to be this way at all. And I'm still definitely not. I'm not like thinking, well, maybe next Feast of Trumpets. No, I think it's a lot sooner than that, because the timeline indicates that it is. Now, we're in the season. I don't know, and I really don't care what day. All I know is that when this war ends and we see those vultures and we see dead bodies, which sounds terrible, but that's what Jesus said we're looking for. So if I'm watching, that's what I'm watching for now. And so every day when I hear, you know, even today it seems that Russia made another pact with Iran. I don't know if you guys heard about that. But they basically got each other's backs now, big time. And so there are just so many things going on. And then I'd like to also interject here that over the last week, I just keep seeing that the restrainer is restraining because God's timing. You can go also to 2 Peter chapter 3, I think it's verse 9, basically, that tells us, that God is not slow as we count it slow. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but that he'll come back when it's time, because he doesn't want anyone to perish. He wants everyone to come to that ugly word, repentance. So, if he's waiting longer, he's giving us more time to complete each of our missions. Not, waiting on the church with the four walls and all to do that is dumb. No, he never said to do that. We individually have our own mission, and I think I'll just speak for myself again. I missed it for most of my life, and I probably still miss it every day. I probably miss many opportunities, and I'm embarrassed about that. But I'm trying. I'm trying. So.
Why are you in office?
Well, and I failed at this, but we need to be praying like never before. When Jesus said to occupy, which means continue to invest and bear fruit, it's occupy, I think, is the worst word that they could have translated that as, because it's dumb. Occupy to me means just hang out, kick back, and wait. That is not what that word means. I wish I had it written down here, but I've looked it up many times, and basically it is bear fruit. It basically connects to all of his parables about bearing fruit and investing, like the talents. Oh, here, Lord, I went and buried the one that you gave me, and here I'm giving it back. Okay, well, no, that you're a wicked servant for doing that. You didn't invest. You didn't bring me anything in addition to yourself. Basically, I gave you yourself, and you're trying to just give yourself back. You let your light, you hid your light under a bushel, and you were warned about that. Now you're going to be called a wicked servant and depart from me. And I've said this before, he made it so easy. He made it so easy, but we're so lazy. It really isn't that hard. But I know, like I said, I miss many opportunities all the time, because either I see something. Today I had to go and make this trip to Fresno to pick up some supplies that I got there, and ended up they didn't have them anyway, and I got to go back tomorrow. It was just a big waste of time. But on my way back, there was a car on the side of the road with the hood up, and some guy standing out there. And as I'm passing by, I'm thinking, I should probably stop, and you know what, I could probably help the guy and then talk to him. And did I? No, I got to hurry. I got to get to work. I got to get all this done, and I got to get that done, and I got to get this other thing done. And I kind of knew it as I was driving by. It's like, oh man.
Is that what that is? Because I've had that happen to me.
Yeah.
A lady on the side of the road, I think she had a flat tire. She was by herself or whatever. And I'm thinking, as I drove by, I'm thinking, I should stop and go help her.
Yeah.
No, I have to get to school or whatever.
We've got our own priorities, yeah. Yeah, that's what that is. I mean, you have to be careful, too. You can't just oh, look, there's a guy with a machete. He looks like he needs some help. I'll go. I'll see if he needs some help. Hey, Jesus loves you. I mean, we have to use our wisdom, too. But, yeah, because if that was us on the side of the road, we'd be hoping that somebody would stop. I bought this old Porsche one time, actually here, before we ever lived here. I found it. We were still in Florida, and I found it over here. It was a good-looking car, but it had all kinds of problems, and I got it cheap. This was back when I actually had a little money, and I could, do that. And but anyway, I figured that I would restore it and get it running and everything. But so we came out here for Christmas. I think it was Christmas, to visit. And the car had been towed to my father-in-law's house, and it was sitting there waiting for us to come. And I'm hoping that I can just get in it and drive off, and it'll be great. But I kind of knew there would be some trouble, but I wasn't sure what. It was too good of a deal for there not to be trouble. So I made it down to, I think that it's the overpass, Manning? I think it's Manning. And broke down on the overpass. No, it wasn't Christmas. It was summer, because it was 1,000 degrees. When I got out to push that car, I think the soles of my shoes were melting to the pavement. It was so dang hot. No, I'm serious. I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. and I'm having to push the car up the hill, you know, because it's an overpass, so it's sort of like a, you know, like a big bow. And this guy with a new Ford whatever pickup truck, he was like a farmer. He stopped and helped me push it, and then we got it out of the way, out of the road. And sorry, there's a gnat. And then he took me to the parts store. I already knew what it was. The distributor cap broke, and it basically it wouldn't hold in place anymore. And so I went. He took me, and we got the parts, and I went back and I fixed it on the side of the road. But if he hadn't stopped, you know, yeah. And I don't even think I had a cell phone with me or anything, so I was pretty stuck. But yeah, so I mean, the guy he you know, he took time out of his busy schedule, whatever he was doing, to help somebody he didn't even know. I wasn't even from here. And so, yeah, I do feel guilty when I just keep on going and thinking, well, I got stuff to do. So it was probably a missed opportunity. You know, I do pray for divine appointments like that, but then do I see them? As I'm passing by, it's like, oh, that was probably one. Well, Lord, we'll get the next one. You know, oh, there's another. Well, we'll get the next one. So I don't know. I'm terrible.
Guilty like that? Does that mean that was probably
more than likely? Yeah, probably. I mean, it. You know, we don't. Yeah, it's like these are little tests. I look at them like life is a test, and these are little tests, and I continually fail these tests. I don't want to fail these. It reminds me of Paul, you know, when he said that I'm going to paraphrase again, but basically he does the things he doesn't want to do, and he doesn't do the we're all like that, you know. We're not perfect, and we're never going to be perfect.
Because the next day or maybe down the road, you might be driving, you might see somebody, and you might just keep on, not even that thought comes up. But when it hits, that...
Yeah, when you kind of know, when you're being nudged, this is an opportunity to share love, to share, you know, that you care. And yeah, I kept on going. Yeah, let me finish this really quick. I know it is. I'm just going to read through this. We'll stop chatting and just get it done. Okay, so Jacob left Bethel and came to a place with a well near Haran and Padan Aram, which may be the same place. Haran means mountain or parched or burned. The well was a shepherd's well, and it had a large stone covering it. Genesis 28, now we're not in Jasher anymore, I'm jumping over to Genesis in the Bible. So Genesis 28 gives some details that are left out of the same account in Jasher. I believe they are also very important, but the hidden meaning may be for others to decipher, because this was a tough one, and I prayed a lot about this and really went through it heavily, but it just to me wasn't really fully revealed. But boy, there's a lot in there. So Jacob asked the shepherds near the well. So remember, he left his parents, he got mugged, right? And now then he went to Bethel. Well, he called it Bethel because he met Jesus. And then now he's entering into the area where Laban lives. And so he comes up on this well that's got a big rock on it, and he sees a bunch of shepherds. So he asked the shepherds near the well if they knew Laban and if he was well. Laban means white, which I think is interesting. I'm not sure how that interconnects yet. You know how a lot of the Hispanic people around here will call, like, they'll have one relative that's kind of a lighter skin, and they call them Wedo. I guess that means white. I think it's kind of the same. That maybe he was really white, and so maybe the parents named him White because he was white. Anyway, that's just a theory. I have no idea. But Laban means white. So they replied that he is well, and look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. Rachel was a shepherdess. Okay, did you know that? Okay. So Jacob is over here going, oh, hot tamale. You know, he finally sees Rachel. So Genesis 29, 7 through 8. Then he, meaning Jacob, said, "Look, it is still high day. It is not time for the cattle to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and feed them." Now he's talking to the shepherds who were there by the well, who do this every day. What in the world? So he's just like taking control and he's telling them what to do. Isn't this an odd thing? This whole scene, I think, is odd, which tells me that there's something else in here. I know there is. So let me repeat that, though. Then he, meaning Jacob, said, he's talking to the shepherds, "Look, it is still high day," which is plenty of daylight left. "It is not time for the cattle to be gathered together." Gathered, that's interesting. "Water the sheep and go and feed them." But they, the shepherds who were there, said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together." And they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. "Then we water the sheep." Number one, who are they? Who are the shepherds waiting on to roll the stone? We never know. We don't know who that is. So cattle in the Hebrew is ha-miknah, and it actually means livestock. It means acquired, possessions, herds, flocks, and purchased. So it's not just cattle. Some of our English translations say cattle, some say herd, some say different things, but it's like, it's livestock basically that I own it, I purchased it. So, there's obviously a much larger story hidden in verses 7 and 8, and then also in verse 10, which says, "And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, hubba, the daughter of Laban his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban his mother's brother." Notice that mother's brother twice in there. "That Jacob went near and rolled a stone from the well's mouth." Now Jacob takes control. He's not waiting on the they that's supposed to do it, and he's not waiting on the right time to do it. He goes and rolls the large stone away from the well's mouth. Okay? "And he watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother." Again, it's pointing out. So we're pretty sure now that Laban is his mother's brother, because the text repeats that many times. So here's some bullet points that I put about this, because again, I don't totally get what all this is about. I don't know if it's past, present, or future. But here are my bullet points. Wells repeatedly relate to future marriages and covenants in the Bible. Wells relate to living water, the Holy Spirit, and the Feast of Tabernacles. I wrote this for the benefit of those later, basically. A large stone to be rolled away certainly connects to Jesus, who is the stone, and to his resurrection, because there was a large stone that had to be rolled away. The sheep had to be gathered together before the stone was rolled away. It wasn't time for the ha-miknah to be gathered together yet. So the herd, basically, the whatever they were. Ha-miknah, again, livestock, may symbolize the nations, because think about it this way: it's not just sheep, it's not just cows, it's anything, any of the possessions of livestock that needed to be watered and fed. I think they're symbolic of the nations. And when you read the book of Enoch, you'll find that all these animals are symbols of different nations, and I think it connects with this. The children of Israel are the sheep, Jeremiah 50 verse 6 and Matthew 10:6. After Rachel arrives with Laban's sheep, Jacob himself rolls the stone away and watered Laban's flock of sheep. It doesn't say that he watered all the sheep, just Laban's sheep. It doesn't say that he watered any of the other livestock either. Jacob then kisses Rachel. She runs to tell her father. He runs back to meet Jacob, kisses him, and brings him to his home in Abraham's land. Now, if you think about Luke, I'm just going to throw this in, but what is it, Luke 16, the story of the beggar, the rich man, and Lazarus, Abraham's bosom. So where is Abraham? And now this is Abraham's land. So I'm just saying, I don't know. I haven't figured out all the connections with this yet, and I don't really think that I ever will. I think someone after me will figure this out. So, Jasher 30, verse 10 through 12. And when Laban heard that his sister's son Jacob had come, he ran and kissed him and embraced him and brought him into the house and gave him bread, and he ate. So they had a little party to commemorate his arrival. And Jacob related to Laban what his brother Esau had done to him and what his son Eliphaz, the 13-year-old, had done to him in the road. Again, this is back in Jasher. This isn't found in Genesis. And Jacob resided in Laban's house for 1 month. Now, why do you suppose it tells us how long he lived there? He lived there for 1 month. And Jacob ate and drank, so they partied basically for a month in the house of Laban. And afterward Laban said unto Jacob, Tell me, what shall be thy wages, for how canst thou serve me for naught? So he got to live for free for a month, and they basically partied that month in celebration of his arrival. And now, but it's time to work. Okay, it's time to get down and dirty and get some work done, because he's broke. At 77 years old, Jacob was brought into the father's house for 1 month, where he ate and drank prior to starting his work to pay for Rachel. What does that mean? I mean, I can make some guesses, but with a lot of these timelines, it's like, okay, I totally get that, Lord. Thank you. You've shown me through other ways what this means, but this time I don't fully know, and I don't think that I'm going to know. I think that it's for someone else to decipher when it happens. This will make sense one day, is what I'm saying. Okay, so the timeline skips over the next year. So we're done with the year 77, which is 2025 on our timeline. Okay, so it skips over 1 year. It doesn't mention anything about his 78th year, which would have been 2026. However, I believe that the word gathering, as it relates to the sheep, will be important in 2026, and we know that from the Psalms on our timeline. It's all about gathering Israel back, which also goes back to what the rabbis believe from the Talmud, basically, that the Antichrist is going to gather Israel back together. Okay, so that aligns, as I said, with our timeline. Okay, so now we're going to jump forward to 2027/2028. These two go together. All right, Jasher 30, verse 15. And in the second year of Jacob's dwelling in Haran, this is where it got me. Like when I saw this that morning, that was in the 79th year of the life of Jacob. I mean, how many timelines have I done that says like 79, 80? And I'm like, Lord, I'll be okay. All right, I get it. I got to do another timeline. I got to do another study. So, in the 79th year of the life of Jacob, in that year died Eber, the son of Shem. He was 464 years old at his death. I mean, come on. All right, so then, again, we're talking about roughly the year 2027, maybe into 2028, as Israel, it's in May when their birthday is, if we can keep such a precise, count of time. Eber was a relative, I believe. I did go back and do some of the backstory on Eber. Jacob lived with him for 14 years, I believe. Prior to this time, he lived with him from the age of 63 through 77. So right in there. I mean, we don't know the month, so. But anyway, Eber means the other side, or the region or realm beyond. He was the son of Shem, which means renown. What does that sound like to you? Think about the giants, the men of renown, the Nephilim. Where are they right now? They're in another dimension. They're in a region beyond. You see how God is using the meaning of these names to tell another story hidden in here? And I already know from the timeline that this is probably the year where things like Revelation chapter 9 are going to come to life, and Joel chapter, is it 2? I think. where you've got these like leaping, I wanted to say leaping lizards. It's like from a movie or something. Leaping lizards. No, but like leaping locusts and stuff and coming into their windows and all this crazy stuff. That all attaches to this. Anyway, so when I put the phrase the region beyond and the word renown together, I think of the Nephilim in Genesis 6. We know that the spirits of disembodied Nephilim are the demonic entities on the other side of our dimension. Will this be the year when the portal will be opened and the two sides will meet? Both of the Psalms on our original timeline, Psalm 127 and 79, and Psalm 54 on the Neganoth timeline indicate a lot of trouble for Jerusalem in 2027. Now, it specifically gives us a number, 464. I'm like, Lord, okay, I don't know what 464 means, but I'm going to figure this out because I think it's important. So if you research the number 464 in Hebrew, it gets really crazy and interesting. Strong's Hebrew number 464 is Eliphaz, the kid, Esau's son that robbed Jacob, is Strong's number 464. Now, I am not one of those that likes to go like find a number and then see what it is in Strong's concordance or whatever, but this one struck me. Like, we just got finished talking about Mr. Eliphaz here, and all of a sudden, the number 464 brings me back to Eliphaz. I thought, okay. So, we know from 2 years earlier, we know who Eliphaz is, and we know that he's the son of Esau who was sent to kill and plunder Jacob. Eliphaz means God of gold in Hebrew. And I don't think, now knowing this is Esau, I don't think he gave him this name meaning like God is so wonderful he's like gold. I believe this is more like false God. God's made out of gold. Now, this was also interesting because the 464 number in Strong's Greek is to struggle against or resist, which kind of connects to a lot of this in the tribulation period too. So in Jewish gematria, 464 somehow equates to 2 cisterns. A cistern is an underground storage compartment for storing rainwater. Revelation 11:6, the 2 witnesses, they have power to shut up the heavens so that, and I believe this is going to happen in 2027 based on the timeline, okay? The 2 witnesses. They have the power to shut up the heavens so that it will not rain during the time they are prophesying, and they have power to turn the waters into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague and as often as they can. So I believe that the 2 cisterns thing quite possibly relates to that. And so there was another Eliphaz in the Bible. He was a descendant of the same Eliphaz. Our Eliphaz was the father of Teman. We meet one of Job's friends, tribulation period, in the book of Job, who happens to also be named Eliphaz, and it says that he was a Temanite. Eliphaz had a son, he was Teman. This Eliphaz is a Temanite. You see the connection? So he's a descendant also named Eliphaz. So when you read Job, I want to go back through Job, and I haven't had time yet, and read everything Eliphaz says and see what connections that has. Maybe one day I'll get to do that. So, just all these connections, they get crazy. And then if you want to spend I could spend the rest of my life doing this. But, all right, so Psalm 46, verse 4. There is a river. Okay, so as I was doing my research, I kept coming up with verses. This is kind of weird, and I normally don't do this. But Psalm 46, 464, is, there is a river whose stream shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. I'm just throwing this in there so that someone sometime may see that there is a real connection here. I'm not saying that there is. Isaiah 46:4, even to your old age, meaning last days, I am he, and even to gray hairs I will carry you. I have made, and I will bear. Even I will carry, and I will deliver you. Now I put Isaiah 46:3, which of course is right before that, here also for context. Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, who have been upheld by me, who have been upheld by me from birth, who have been carried from the womb. This to me is end time also, for sure, because it's talking about the remnant that God is protecting. He is protecting them and carrying them. That's the remnant in the, that's never happened. I mean, it kind of has, but not really like this. So, all right, so now let's move on to Jasher 30:16. And when Jacob heard that Eber was dead, he grieved exceedingly, and he lamented and mourned over him many days. So here's my question. Will 2027 be a time of mourning in Israel? Jacob had lived with Eber previously for 14 years from the age of 63 to 77. I've already said that. Will the two witnesses shut up the heavens so that it won't rain in 2027? Will the tabernacle be completed in 2027? The timeline indicates that it will. Will the remnant of Israel be protected by the Lord in 2027 during an invasion from the region beyond? And I think about Joel 2 and Revelation chapter 9. Okay, that's enough about that year. So, Jasher 30, verse 17. And in the 3rd year of Jacob's dwelling in Haran, Basmath, the daughter of Ishmael, the wife of Esau, bare unto him a son, and Esau called his name Reuel. The 3rd year equates to 2028/2029 on our timeline. Basmath means fragrance. I'm not sure if that connects to anything. I don't really get that. But Reuel really does. Because Reuel means pasture, feed, and shepherd. A shepherd does what? A shepherd leads and protects his flock. So, this same year, which would be 2028-ish, right in there, Psalm 80, verse 1, Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock. You who dwell between the cherubim, shine forth. Here's Psalm 128:1, also in the same year. Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways, as in walks with him, in his ways. And then Psalm 128:5, the Lord will bless you out of Zion, because I believe that's a tricky way that God put it in there, that they're going to be out of Zion. They're not going to be in Zion anymore, they're going to be out. That's the middle of the tribulation period when the remnant has to flee. Okay. So we know that the middle of the tribulation period is the time when the remnant of Israel will have to flee into the wilderness after they see the abomination of desolation standing in the newly rebuilt temple. That's Matthew 24:15-16. According to Daniel 9:27, in the middle of the week of years, which means 7 years, or at the 3.5-year mark, the Antichrist will break the 7-year covenant. Interestingly, I just threw this in here because I've been dying to talk about Psalm 55.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Psalm 55, which is in the middle of the 7 Neganoth Psalms, has this to say about this event. This is pretty great. This is from Psalm 55, 20-21. He has put forth his hand against those who were at peace with him. That's Israel. The he is the Antichrist. He has broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. So what have I been talking about? Even before I found all of this and connected it to the middle of the tribulation, he's going to take his mask off. He's going to reveal that basically he gathered them. I've gathered you all together here today, my beloved, to kill you. That's the purpose. That's what this is saying. Okay, now that's enough of that. Let's move on to Esau. So what I find in Jasher from this time forward, 2028/2029-ish, I honestly think it's going to be in the spring of 2029. From this time forward, in all of this information that Jasher gives us, most of it's about Esau. I mean, Jacob is still kind of about Jacob, but it keeps talking a lot about Esau. And then you go to the book of Obadiah and other places, and you see, remember, as I said, Esau, the Edomites are the descendants of Esau. Herod, the baby killer, Edomite. I'll get into some of that. So anyway, so Jasher chapter 30 speaks a lot about Esau. Of course, we know that Esau is the father of the Edomites. There are many end-time prophecies pertaining to God's judgment of specifically the Edomites. The book of Obadiah, Jeremiah 9, 25, 49, Ezekiel 25, 35, Isaiah 11, 34, 63, Joel 3, Amos 1, Amos 9, Malachi 1. Just to name a few. Let me just put it this way. I wouldn't want to be an Edomite the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, because their story isn't going to end well. The late Chuck Missler, does anybody know who that is? Look him up. Fantastic. I love listening to him.
Yeah,
Chuck Missler, he passed away a few years back. Very smart. If I had half his intelligence, I'd be so thrilled. Okay, he believed that the Palestinians of today are primarily made up of the ancient Edomites, but they're obviously very intermixed with Arabs and so forth. But if that's the truth, because I mean we don't really know, but he's deducing that from a lot of scripture and a lot of history. But wouldn't that explain a lot? You know, just knowing who Esau was. All right, so now we're going to move into 2029 / 2030-ish, which is Jasher 30:18. And in the 4th year of Jacob's residence in the house of Laban, who means white, the Lord visited Laban and remembered him on account of Jacob. And sons were born unto him, and his firstborn was Beor. His second was Alib, and the third was Koresh. Now, why do you suppose? What do we care what his sons were named? It's because God put these names in there for a reason. The 4th year equates to, as I said, 2029 / 2030 on our timeline. Beor means fire, that which consumes or cleans out. Alib means successor, and in Arabic, so now when you get into some of this, you got to look at the Arabic names too, especially with Esau. The Arab version of Alib means wise or to know, and Koresh or Harash means cut into something or plowing. Now, for those who have read the book, do you remember happens to be a year on the timeline when the psalm actually says, they plowed my back and made their furrows long. That happens to be this year. You can't make that up. Well, I'll actually read it. Psalm 129, verse 3, the plowers plowed on my back, they made their furrows long. Okay, I'm going to move through that one. I'm trying to get this done as quick as I can. It is getting hot in here. So 2030 / 2031, which is in Jasher 30, 21. And in the 5th year died basically Judith, okay, Jehudith, the daughter of Beeri, the wife of Esau. So we're talking about Esau again, in the land of Canaan. And she had no sons but daughters only. So the 5th year, as I said, relates to 2030 / 2031 on our timeline. Jehudith means praised woman of Judah, or Judea. Now I want you to think about this. We're talking about Jacob and Esau before Jacob has any sons. How can this woman be named Judith, from the word Jew, basically, when Judah didn't exist yet? Because God put it in their heart to name her this before there even was such a thing, to point to something else later in time. That's the only explanation. This happens twice in here, by the way. Okay, this isn't the only time where there's a name of something, of someone that relates to something later that didn't even exist when they were given this name. I think it's amazing. Okay, Birai means purify, clean, a well, and to write in stone. Now I want to think about also the timeline for this year. We know that Israel is being purified as gold is purified by heat, basically by fire. You know, we know that. That's in my book, and all the interconnecting scriptures are in there. So I think that definitely very much aligns with everything on the timeline. So according to Jasher 30, in the 5th year of Jacob's work for Rachel, which equates to 2030/2031 on our timeline, a wife of Esau died named Judith, in Hebrew, which means a praised woman of Judah. However, at the time she lived, Judah hadn't been born yet, so there was no such thing as a woman of Judea. God is amazing. Remember that Esau was Jacob's brother, Remember that Esau was Jacob's brother, but he was also Jacob's enemy. He wanted to kill Jacob. Remember that Jesus spoke of those who claim to be Jews, as in Judeans, but aren't. They are from the synagogue of Satan. You can find that in Revelation 2:9, and oddly enough, Revelation 3:9. Remember also that Herod was an Edomite, a descendant of Esau, the same Herod who had the babies killed around the time of Jesus' birth. Even though he practiced the Jewish customs and religion, there's a whole historical backstory to this, but I can't go into that tonight. So Herod practiced the Jewish customs and religion, although he was not a Jew, but an Edomite. He even had the Jewish temple renovated during this time. They called him Herod the Great, even though he was not a Jew. It is known historically that he appointed many of his fellow Edomites to high positions in Jerusalem, and that many of the Pharisees were in fact Edomites. So what will happen to these imposters and infiltrators in 2030/2031? That's my kind of ending question. And you know, it's quite likely you hear a lot of people that really hate the Jews. They'll talk about the globalists. Those are probably not Jews. They're infiltrators. They're probably these Edomites. They're probably, you know, think about it. So in 135 AD, the Jews by the Romans were kicked out of Israel. And then the Romans changed the name of the land to Philistia, which is where we get Palestine from today. So who moved in when the Israelites got kicked out? The nomadic neighbors and whatnot, but the Edomites. So they took over the land. Now they claim the land that is their land, but it's not their land. God never gave them that land. They're the infiltrators that basically came in and said, well, haha, good, Israel got kicked out because we hate them anyway, and now we're going to take over the land. And now this explains what we're seeing today. This is why they raise their children to hate Israel, to hate the Jews, to kill the Jews. They send them to little terror camps when they're little kids, and it's just a death cult. They absolutely hate them, and there's no other explanation for it other than the fact that it's a demonic entity that is, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to go through all that, but anyway. All right, so Jasher 30:24-25. And then the 6th year, Esau took for a wife, in addition to his other wives, Alabama, which kind of sounds like my home state, Alabama, the daughter of, I hope that's, no, never mind. Because this is another, a wife of Esau. I don't want my state to be named after a wife of Esau. Anyway, so it's Alibamah, and there's another way that they spell. It depends on the translation. It's also spelled sometimes with an O at the beginning, but Alibamah, the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and Esau brought her to the land of Canaan. So he would go out and find these wives and then bring them back. And Alabama conceived and bare unto Esau 3 sons, Yeush, Yalen, and Korah. Does Korah sound familiar? The very last one, right at the end of all of this, the sons of Korah. Korah, from the time of Moses, was an offshoot of the Levites, who argued and basically fought with Moses, and God opened up the ground and swallowed them up. And some of them, although we thought all of them were dead, that God killed all of them, he must have redeemed some. He saved a remnant even of them, because then later they wrote the Psalms. They are the sons of Korah. Psalm 84, when we see when the Jews basically, or the world sees the face of Jesus again, that's written by the sons of Korah. So the last born in this whole story here happens to be named Korah, which wasn't a thing yet until Moses, many, many, many years later. You can't make that up. Why did they name him Korah? It wasn't a thing. Anyway, I'm not going to go. I get carried away. I'm sorry. But isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I just look at this now and I say to myself, that is not a coincidence. That is God telling a bigger story hidden in all these names. So, Alabama means tent of the high place. Okay, there's a good connection there. Zibeon means iniquity that dwells, robber, hyena, variegated, irregular patches. So during the same year, there was a quarrel between the herdsmen of Canaan and Esau's herdsmen, according to Jasher 30. Esau's 83rd year. Now, if you look at Psalm 83, there's a war going on, right? So now there's this quarrel. They don't actually fight, but it's really interesting. So, again, same story, different kind of outcome, or it's just told differently. So Esau's 83rd year was the year when Esau and all of his family and possessions moved from Canaan, Israel, to Seir, which is Edom or Idumea, the land of the Horites. Esau and his offspring then also intermarried with the Horites. So there's all this intermarrying going on, so it's hard to know who's who anymore. Horite is a cave dweller, interestingly enough. They lived in the mountains and they were called Horites. They were cave dwellers. So, considering the amount of tunnels the enemies of Israel have built around Israel in order to attack them, that is an interesting thing, that they're cave dwellers, these Horites. Also, considering the verses in Revelation about those hiding in caves and wanting the rocks to fall on them to escape the Lord's wrath, I think that's kind of interesting. So there's some, tribulation connections there as well. Revelation 6, verses 15 through 17, and the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the Tsar, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said unto the mountains and the rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? All right, let's move into 2032 and 2033. Jacob was 84 years old. Israel will be 84 in 2032/2033. Jasher 31, verse 1. And in the 7th year, it just walks us right through this, year by year. Jacob's service which he served Laban was completed, and Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for the days of my service are fulfilled. And Laban did so. And Laban and Jacob assembled all the people at that place, and they made a feast. After the 7 years are over, the remnant of Israel will finally be married to the true Messiah, Yeshua. According to the timeline in the Psalms, that will happen in Israel's 84th year, which coincides with Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection in 32 AD, plus 2,000 years. Of course, we also know Hannah, that whole story. All these timelines intermingle and match each other. 2,000 years is made up of 40 Jubilee periods. Biblically, the number 40 relates to a time of testing, temptation, trials, and probation. However, when that time is over, the biblical pattern indicates that it will be a time of victory, celebration, transition, provision, and entering into the promised land. You see how the 40, now we've been in 40 Jubilees for basically the church age. It's a time of testing and trouble, and that's all it's been. Well, that time is ending. Like, it's ending now. And then it switches. So there's the 40, just like Jesus. He went into the wilderness and was basically fasting and all and tempted by the devil for 40 days. Then what happened? Then when it was over, the angels came and attended to him. There's a lot of those such stories in the Bible, but it's always 40, and then when you pass the test, basically, then it's a celebration. There's provision, like in that story they provided for him and all. So you can kind of see the context there. So in closing, as I mentioned before, much of this revealed timeline is still sealed up. It hasn't been fully revealed yet, but I believe that it will begin to make more sense as events continue to unfold in the coming years. And I hope we're not here to see those. No, Lord, we're not here to see those. Right now, I can only see dimly lit. However, I believe it is important to document this timeline to give those who will find this information a head start in their understanding of the times that they will be living in and basically trapped in, unfortunately. So, the last thing that I wanted to do tonight was pray for encouragement, understanding, and protection over all of those who will be left to find this information. I fully believe we need to be praying for them now. We don't know who they are, but we need to be praying for them because we can't even imagine what the things they're going to see and the things that are going to happen on this world. I think we see it so dimly right now. It just seems like, like a sci-fi movie or something, but to be trapped in it is going to be horrible. So anyway, let's just pray real quick and then we'll get out of it. Well, I'll turn the air back on. Dear Lord, we love you so much, and we thank you for this word tonight. Lord, we pray that you would open up our minds, our spirits, our hearts, so that we can continue to meditate on this. We pray, Lord, that this isn't just for us, that we will also take this out into the world with us as we go, realizing that time is short, that this is all real. We don't know when you're coming for your church, but we know that it's soon. We're in the season, and that's all that matters, Lord. We know that you gave us what to watch for, and we're watching. You told us to watch, and we'll continue to be obedient. Lord, but a lot of this information, we fully intend to leave it behind, and we pray, Lord, for all those who will find it, that you will set their hearts on fire, that they will cause a revival in this world, starting in their towns or wherever, like never seen before, Lord. We just praise you and give you all the praise and glory that you deserve, because you have connected so many things. It's just so amazing. Our ways are so tiny compared to yours, Lord. It's unimaginable how you have done this and interconnected this and left it to only be revealed at this time, and obviously some things not to be revealed yet. And you that is totally in your power and according to your timeline when to reveal those things. But Lord, we just pray that you would give them supernatural strength and power and courage. Lord, they're going to need courage like I can't even imagine. So Lord, we just thank you for that, and pray that you would prepare the way, and keep them safe. And Lord, we just pray for peace and salvation for Israel tonight also. Everything that's ahead of them, I believe that it is absolutely designed as it's a plan, and I believe the restrainer is restraining. But I also believe, Lord, that we're going to see some amazing things soon, and the whole world will have to deal with the fact that there is a God, and you are God, and they're either going to hate you and reject you, or they're going to cling to you, and then you will come for your church, for your bride. So I thank you for that, Lord. Thank you for all the insights that you've shared with us, and we love you again and praise you very much, Lord, in your Son, Jesus, Yeshua